Hey there guys, welcome to another Tutorial Tuesday. We're up to lesson 9 now, so it's really starting to get quite exciting. We're going to continue with our baby portrait. It's been fantastic seeing some of your progress on the Facebook page. Thanks for all of the lovely comments. I've been receiving some great comments from you. I am trying my best to convey the message of how I draw things. I know sometimes it's difficult at the beginning and when we're starting to learn these things, but keep persevering. You're all doing really well. Just gone through a quick checklist of things to remember. Make sure we've washed our hands before we start doing any drawing. We've not got any oil or anything like that on our hands. Make sure that our pencils are nice and sharp, our drawing area is clear. If you're a right-hander, make sure that we've got our light coming in from the left-hand side. If you're a left-hander, we want the light coming in from the right-hand side. As you can see, I did do a little bit more of the baby. I started to fill out some of the value in the forehead here and just started tidying up a few areas. So hopefully you've got this far. Some of you might have gone a little bit further on. But what I really want to concentrate on today is just starting to get some value now into the baby's hands. And this arm coming underneath the baby's cheek here. That will give us a better idea then of how much more value we need to add into the face area, and then we'll be coming over on into the hair. So without further ado, I'm going to start with my 2H pencil, and we're going to just start to bring some value into this arm that's sort of underneath the baby's cheek here. Again, we're going to work out from the darkest side, the darkest area. Just still using our tapered stroke, which I'm sure some of you are now starting to master and perfect. And if we're going back to our sphere exercise or the barrel exercise, this is a dark area and it comes around. So this is going to be our lighter area and it goes back again into a dark area underneath. This baby's lying on, it looks like something like a towel, a cotton towel or a fluffy towel. So again, working from the darkest area, keeping these strokes as close together as we can. And then once we've got value in the entire arm and chest area here, it will give us a better look at once we put the hair on, because the amazing thing when we put hair on, and in this case of the baby here, it is quite dark hair. It's amazing how you get some dark hair on and you realise you need to put much more value into certain areas. So we think we've gone dark enough, but the reason we might think we've gone dark enough when really we haven't is because we're still on a very light background. As soon as we start to put the value in around the hair, we may get a different impression. So again, it's building these things up and not going too dark, not leaving things to chance, and having a feel of how this drawing is going to turn out, even I would say even in these early stages. I mean, we're not very early on anymore. You know, we're definitely halfway through. What are we? Lesson 9 now. So lesson 6 was plotting. 7 and 8 and 9, obviously today's video, we are adding the value in. So another couple of videos after this, and I'm thinking that we're probably going to be done with this baby. So it'd be fantastic to see how some of you do get on with it. It's been really good getting to know some of you guys and girls over on the Facebook page. Don't forget, if this is the first time you've visited my channel, we are actually on lesson 9. Go back to lesson number 1 and go through the exercises. I would really recommend just trying to do them at the same sort of speed. Listen to everything. It's something that I did when I was learning to draw. I literally watched the videos over and over, reversed them, went back to an area that I didn't quite understand, paused it, and just tried to keep up with the teachers and the tutors that I was learning from. So I really would recommend doing that. Don't rush it. Don't skip all the way to the end to see how far we've gone, because it's the process that I'm trying to teach you, and it is quite methodical. And it's amazing how sometimes we get an impression of something and we just miss a snippet of information, and that can throw us right off track. So keep watching the videos. Go back to something that you don't understand, but also don't be discouraged from asking some questions. You know, we've got some brilliant artists in the group. I try my best to answer every question. Obviously, as the Facebook group's growing, and it's growing by the day now, it does become more and more difficult to answer every question, particularly straight away. But I will endeavour to do that. Now, when we talk about making a drawing better than the reference image, if you have a look here at this baby's fingers, there's not really any definition between the two fingers, although we know that there is. So I'm just going to make sure that I do get that. And we're just going. That's another opportunity for us to make this drawing look more realistic than the actual reference that we're working from. Now, I'm pretty sure that if we had the original photograph of this and it was one of those super high resolution photographs, which it probably was looking at this baby, then you'd possibly get that. But as you start drawing more, you are going to be asked to do pictures where the reference image isn't necessarily fantastic. Now, although I wouldn't ever condone going out there and making things up, I know that this baby's finger has separation between, so what is it? This is his pinky, or her pinky. I think this is a boy. I think he looks like a boy to me. But he could be a girl, could be a little girl. But I think that this baby's pinky here is definitely sitting in front of that middle, or sort of second finger along, isn't it, from the pinky there. So I'm just going to build that in. I'm not going in with a big dark line. I'm just giving the impression that we've got some separation there. So this is going to be a slightly darker point there, and I'm just going to build out some value. Again, each of these fingers still has this contour to it. So we're going dark in this area here, out to light, and then the edges are going to be slightly darker. We can add these creases and these wrinkles in with a slightly softer pencil, maybe with the HB. We'll see how we feel with that. But we're just laying these foundations down, just laying this 2H pencil down methodically, doing things on purpose, not leaving anything to chance. Always a tapered stroke, pulling the pencil towards me, making sure I'm turning the pencil every now and then, just to keep the sharp point. And those of you that have been with me on this journey from the start will realise that over the last few hours of drawing, I've barely sharpened the pencils. The first few drawings I ever did, when I didn't really have a method, and it was a sort of scribbling and smudging type method, I used to go through pencils very quickly, constantly sharpening them. Since then, I think in 2 years I haven't had to buy a new set of pencils. Maybe a few of the darker pencils have run out a little bit quicker, the 4Bs, the 6Bs, the 8Bs, because they are softer and they do require sharpening quicker. But apart from that, certainly my 4H, 2H, HB, I've still got, this is still one that I've had for a couple of years. I'm going to brush some value into that now. So using our soft brush, this is just a, what size is it again? It's a 2-inch brush. It's very soft. A makeup brush would do the job. Coming in with my HB pencil now, and I'm just going to start to reinforce these darker areas, just so that we can give the impression of separation between the face and the fingers themselves. What we've been discussing over the last few weeks is trying to find as many opportunities in our reference image to show contour, separation. We've spoken about hard and soft edges. So a soft edge is going to be one that represents a contour or a rounded effect. A hard edge is going to give us the impression that something is covering something else. So this is a hard edge here, the baby's face. This here needs to come to an abrupt end. The value stops. Whereas this going into the baby's cheek, the value doesn't stop, it just fades. And if you cast your mind back to the very first lesson where we were learning the stroke and we were doing our patches work, we were talking about that gradation of value and not allowing it to just stop. And then if you go back to the barrel exercise, which I think was lesson 5, again the same thing happened. We were talking about soft edges and hard edges. So now I'm starting to get some value into this baby's hand here. I can see this needs to be darker straight away. And that's the beauty with building it up. If I'd have just drawn one area to completion, I might have had a wrong representation. I might have gone too dark in a certain area, which then means I need to bring the rest of the baby's values in certain areas up. And we end up going too dark, and sometimes it's unnecessary. Now, I am always an advocate of using more value, and certainly one of the things that we've discussed on the group is not being afraid of the dark areas and going darker with your values, but there is a limit sometimes. So this is going to be a soft edge here. If I make this line here too abrupt, it's going to look like a stripe on the baby's face or maybe a harsh shadow, and we haven't got that. So I need to fade this out, building the layers up of the value, and I'm going to come back in with the 2H pencil now and just go to the edge of where the HB pencil was, and I'm just going to come out then, and that just gives us that smooth transition from the HB into the 2H and then into the lighter area. And what I can also do there is I can just tap it back slightly on the edge with the kneaded eraser. And you can see we have got value in there. And it's that constant process of adding the value, taking it away, adding the value, taking it away. So coming slightly down into this baby's arm now. Now what I'm doing here is I'm lengthening my stroke. I've got a large area here that we need to cover. And I don't want to rush it, of course I don't, but I'm just lengthening my stroke out now. And what that's going to do is it's just going to give me a slightly quicker coverage. So again, I'm using my sphere exercise. That's deep rooted in my mind now on anything that's rounded, which is most things, certainly if you're drawing a person or a body or something. This is rounded here. Dark, dark, light in the middle. So I'm getting that with every stroke. I'm reinforcing this darker edge. And I'm fading out into the 2H. And then I might even remove some of the value in this mid area as we go through the drawing. You can see this technique takes quite a while. I mean, we're up to sort of 13 minutes now, and it barely looks like we've scratched the surface of this arm. But I promise you it's worth it. You will speed up. I know some of you, when you were drawing your spheres, were taking 3 hours upwards. I can remember the same thing. And I think we completed the sphere in the lessons in maybe an hour and a half. That was with me rambling on and talking over it. So you will get down to laying it quicker. But it's like we've said, it isn't a rush. You can't produce work of a really high quality by rushing it. Obviously, that's why some people like to use the kneaded erasers and the tortillions and things like that to smudge areas and blend, maybe tissue papers, maybe a Q-tip. But this is the method that I want you to get to grips with. Once you've got this as a foundation, you can happily go and experiment with other things, but you've always got this as a foundation. You've got a deep-rooted understanding of how value works, how we can lay it down, how we can avoid graphite shine, which is another thing that you see. You look at some of these pictures that people have used tortillions, which are paper stumps, or they've used tissue paper, and they've really worked the graphite into the tooth of the paper. And what happens then is it becomes shiny because the graphite is the particles of graphite are very, very smooth. And as you grind them down and they all lay flat into the tooth of the paper, you get what's called graphite shine, which means that from certain angles, when you're looking at the picture, they have this glare to them, which is very unrealistic. Whereas with this method, we do avoid that to a large extent. You're never going to completely avoid it, but certainly in your harder pencils, we are going to avoid that graphite shine. So these pictures that people have used methods of blending tools, they look brilliant when they've taken a photograph for their Instagram post because they've got the angle right. But if you were to have a look at that hanging on a wall, if they were going to give it to somebody, then there were going to be areas that the sun reflects off of them and whatnot, and you just lose that illusion. Whereas this method, we don't have that. Making sure we're turning our paper, always turning. Just working this slightly darker area there. So let's bring some more value now into this baby's chest area here. And again, we've got the same thing. This is the darkest area. This baby's chest is rounded. There's a contour to it. And we're going to try and represent that by working the darkest area and just fading it out, just like our patchwork exercise. I'm definitely going to get a little bit of HB in there as well. We're getting quite a close representation now of what this baby actually looks like. So we're much darker under here. Now I need to get some value into this chest area because this shaded area here that you can see under there is very dark. So we're going to go 2B, 4B, maybe even to a 6B in there. So I need to start building that value up. And like I mentioned, I think it was in the last video, you only need 3 or 4 areas that are absolutely the darkest places, and to really bring the contrast up in those areas as opposed to your lighter areas, and that's going to give your drawing a very realistic look to it. It's amazing. I've seen people doing very, very accurate, realistic looking drawings with a blue pen, and even though it's blue and your mind knows it's blue and nobody's blue, they've got the contrast spot on, they've got the proportions correct, and they've got the transitions from light to dark correct. And even in a blue biro or a blue ink pen, it looks stunningly realistic. So don't be afraid of going dark in some areas when keeping it. I can remember some of my early drawings, and if some of you have found my Instagram page, it's at artistic N1K, artistic Nick, It's the same name as the YouTube channel. I scroll down to the bottom of my feed on Instagram, and you'll see some of my earlier drawings. You'll really just see the process that I've been going through. I used to post lots of pictures of my drawing progress and how I was getting on, and you'll see some of them being very washed out. And what a washed out drawing lacks is it lacks these very dark areas. I can remember drawing a stormtrooper, a Star Wars stormtrooper. I took ages doing it. I was really happy with it, but I just hadn't captured the darkness in the eye area. And they have a band going around the top of their head, which is black to all intents and purposes. But I was so scared of going too dark in areas that I'd probably gone up to a 2B in it. And looking back at it now, I would, if I was to be redrawing that again, and hey ho, who knows, we might do something like that, some fan art at some stage in one of these drawing tutorials. So maybe a stormtrooper might be on our agenda. But if I was going to do that again, I would certainly be ramping the contrast up in those areas. I wouldn't do an awful lot that much different because I was quite happy with how it turned out. But looking back at it, I'd certainly need to bring some value into those eye areas and the band around the head, and just those nooks and crannies around the mouth that really need to go dark. So I'm not afraid anymore of going dark. So now we're getting some value in there. I'm going to come in with the HB pencil and the 2B pencil. I'm going to really darken that shadowed area up there now. I'm going to give that a quick brush. Remember, when we're brushing, brush away from the dark area. So I'm taking my stroke downwards, but from the darkest area, and bringing the value into the light. That way I'm balancing the values and I understand where value needs to be added. So we're coming into, let's put that under there. So we're going to really work on this area here now with the HB pencil. And this is one of the shadowed areas that is really going to make this hand look as though it is sitting above the chest area. It's going to give it almost that three-dimensional look to it. If you remember when we were drawing our sphere, we had that cast shadow. Well, this is exactly it. And if you cast your minds back, no pun intended, the darkest part of the shadow is going to be under there, which we can represent better than that photograph can printed on that piece of paper. So this is another opportunity for me to start making this look more realistic and more believable than our reference image. So working that initial area under there more, and I'll go in with some 2B in a second, but getting a rough idea of how deep this shadow comes down. So I'm trying to represent this shape here. But yeah, definitely 2B now. Time for the 2B. I really love laying the 2B down. It's a wonderful pencil. It's actually, using this method, it's actually a very dark pencil. It's all about the contrast though. You know, it's not necessarily a very dark pencil. I mean, you can go much darker. You know, you look at a 9B pencil and it's very dark. But because of the method that we're using, you might want to just go to a 2B in that area. If you've got a very light skinned area, as we have on parts of this baby, this 2B may be dark enough to for us to leave it. I'm going to go darker, but you could quite easily stop with a 2B on this. And then again on other drawings, this is going to be one of the lighter areas. If we were drawing, maybe a car or something that was of dark colour, this 2B might be one of our lighter areas. Not the lightest, we'd have a shine on there in places, but you might be going 2B up to a 9B. But it's just nice to have that control. You make the decision. So back in with the HB now, we're just going to layer over the top of that 2B area. And again, you just see the richness of the value coming out. And then I can gradually bring that out so we don't come to an abrupt end. There's a fuzzy edge to the shadow that we want to try and represent. We don't want it to be a distinct end. Look at any shadow. Have a look now as you're drawing and have a look at where your hand is sitting. It's a fuzzy edge. We want that fuzzy edge. And I might even come in with a 2H. So again, work from the dark. And it's a beautiful thing. I can still add value with a 2H pencil over 2B. Whereas the methods that we've been learning, or certainly I tried to master initially in the early days, I was stuck. I couldn't add anything to this now with a 2H. Certainly not. It was, dark, and the graphite was ground into the tooth of the paper. So I'm starting on the top edge of this hand now. And we know, because the way that light works, that this edge here is darker. It's the darkest area on this side, because that's the way that the hand is curving round. And that's where light is getting to less from our perspective. If you were on a different side of the baby, that might be the lighter area. But from the perspective that we're viewing this baby, that's the area that's going to have the least light, and this area here, because it's rounded. This is going to be the lightest area. And you can see that this reference image is not fantastic. It's one of those images where the face is focused and everything else is slightly out of focus. You can do that with quite a few of these smartphones that are out now. There are apps that you can use. I think it's called bokeh. It's a bokeh image. It's one part of it is in focus and another part's less focused. I guess it just brings your attention to parts of the photograph that you want to stand out. A baby's face, or a flower in a field, or something like that. We can represent that. We can do that. We can copy that. It's no problem. We just make the lines less harsh. So where we know it's a very, very hard edge, we just soften the sides a little bit more than we normally would. We give it less definition. And with that slightly less definition, we get that slightly blurry look to it. I'm going to brush some value into there. And this is all we're ever going to use. We're never going to be using stump, things like that. With the exception, as we go through a few landscape drawings, when we're drawing clouds, I do like to softly use a little piece of tissue paper in certain areas, and we'll come to that. I love drawing clouds. They're so easy to make look really realistic, and similar with light coloured hair. I like doing light coloured hair, which we will come on to. It's definitely something that is on my list of things to do. If you've got any ideas or any requests, let me know in the comments below on the video, or as always, get hold of me on the group. Don't forget to invite people to the group if you've got people that you think may benefit from this. And we've got some brilliant artists in there, and it's nice to have those in there as well, and just sharing some of their knowledge and information. And it's nice to see people that are already accomplished artists trying a different method. We can all learn. Doesn't matter what level we're at. Sometimes it's very nice to come back to basics. Not get lost in the complicated methods that we sometimes find ourselves getting wrapped up in. I think I put a message on the group a couple of weeks ago saying don't get caught up in this having to buy the most expensive materials rat race. I've been there, I've done it. I've brought everything. I've got a cupboard full of art supplies, and it's surprising how poor technique and understanding of techniques cannot be papered over by the latest pencil or the most expensive paper. I'm just working in this area of the hand now. Again, this is a dark area, that's a dark area, and we're just going to bring the value round and together. And as I'm building this value, and you can see that I'm going to start needing to reinforce the dark area under here. So I'm going to need to go up to the HB in a second in this area because it's looking washed out. And we want to avoid that at all costs. So I'm going to go in with the HB now. And we've got a nice dark recess in there. It's darker in here than it is out here. So I think we can get an impression of where the light's coming from. It's this angle. It might be slightly more front on coming that way, but it's certainly coming from the right of the drawing or the photograph. In our drawing it's going to be the same. And that's why reference images are so important. If you've got a good reference image with usually a single light source works the best. Outdoor, natural daylight, that usually works the best. Gives you an opportunity to create something very realistic. But if you haven't, you can sometimes, and like I said, I don't like making things up, but you can sometimes decide on a clear point of where the direction of the light's coming from and work it from there yourself, as long as you're understanding that you're getting things in the right place. So I don't want a shadow under here, but then a shadow over there, because that's just going to give the viewer an uneasy time of looking at your drawing. They might not necessarily know what looks off, but they'll know something's off. And you want to give them the illusion. So back in with the 2H pencil now. Again, reinforce that and then just bring some of the value out into this midsection of this finger. That's very dark in there. So, sort of getting towards the end of this now, what I'd like you to continue doing is adding some value into this hand area here, maybe into this arm area, so reinforcing this dark part underneath there. Reinforce your dark areas, and then next time, in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to just really start to look at balancing some of the values and possibly start adding some hair. So we'll go through some of the technique required for bringing the value into the hair and having some realistic looking hair. We've got some brilliant opportunities with this to start understanding how we draw hair and not being afraid of it. I would still be working with your 2H and your HB pencil in some of the dark areas with your HB, and then in the very darkest creases a bit of 2B. Don't forget to keep tapping back with your kneaded eraser, and then add in some more value if necessary. If you think you're going too dark, go into your 4H pencil. Like we've said, some pencils are darker than others, so you might have a different brand of pencil that the 2H in that brand is quite dark, so you might want to go into a 4H for your lighter areas, your lighter tones. It's absolutely fine, and you'll get to know your pencils. That's why like I say, I've stuck with these Caran D'ache grafwood pencils now. This is my 3rd year using them, so I have a real understanding of how they work, what works best with what, if I want a dark value, how I lay it down best. So continue with that. Thanks again for joining me. It's been a pleasure sharing some of my ideas and techniques with you. It's been great getting to know some of you on the Facebook group. Keep posting your work, keep inviting people if you think that you know somebody that might benefit from joining us. Let's keep this group friendly, active. Let's not put people off by too much criticism. Constructive criticism is fantastic. We all need that. But let's make sure that we're not offending people and making people feel like they can't post their work. Like I said in a couple of posts a few weeks ago, there's plenty of Facebook groups out there that are like that. And keep drawing. It's really exciting to see some of you progressing now with some of the lessons. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks a lot. Hit subscribe, smack the notifications button, follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.